Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. There are all sorts of crypto media outlets with headlines like the one on your screen here, this one from the Crypto Basic. Here's why August 15th could be a turning point for XRP. So I'm going to share with you perspective from two different attorneys, one in the XRP community and another who is a former SEC attorney, so they're kind of in the know. And there's been all sorts of speculation in the community about what this means, what it's actually going to be. Some of it inducing eye rolls for me, a little bit silly, but nonetheless, I just want to kind of straighten it out, so I do have a quick update on this. And then there's also this story, and this will be great for XRP specifically, by the way, absolutely. Here it is from Cointelegraph. SEC approves in-kind creations and redemptions for crypto ETPs. I will explain exactly what this means. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And so here's a headline from CoinGape. XRP lawsuit, Ripple and SEC may dismiss appeals before August 15th, says lawyer. As the August 15th status report deadline approaches, former SEC lawyer Mark Fagel remains optimistic about a positive development in the XRP lawsuit. Fagel believes that both Ripple and the SEC will likely drop their appeals before the deadline. So I'm going to show you exactly what he had to say about this. Now, first, I did want to note that there were alleged to have been some closed-door meetings having to do with the SEC and Ripple. And there's no evidence of that actually being the case. There's just these assertions, but I have a strong suspicion about what is actually being referenced. It's probably this, because it has happened so many times I've lost count over the last few years in particular. So the SEC, almost literally almost every single week, the SEC will have a meeting where they discuss a number of broad topics, and the specifics are actually never announced. But here's a Sunshine Act notice. You will find one of these on the SEC website just about every single week. This one's for literally tomorrow, July 31st, 2025. There was another one a week ago, because again, like I said, it's pretty much every single week. And the part that I highlighted right here on the screen, that's the part that gets some people in the XRP community all hot and bothered, especially leading up to the point where we were talking about settlement regarding the SEC v. Ripple lawsuit. But this is the type of language that people see, and then they assume it has to do with Ripple, even though it doesn't. And then every once in a while, it'll start going viral within the XRP community, and then I have to make a video highlighting how this is stupid, and this is actually not the case. But here you can see some of the language that gets people excited. It reads as follows. The subject matter of the closed meeting will consist of the following topics: institution and settlement of injunctive actions, institution and settlement of administrative proceedings, resolution of litigation claims, and other matters relating to examinations and enforcement proceedings. So you could imagine that could be anything, and so people do. And they assume that's what it is. So I'm speculating that that's what's being discussed right here. This is from an XRP community member named Crypto Crows, who wrote, SEC just holds their fourth closed-door meeting on Ripple's appeal. A delay could hold up XRP spot ETF approvals, but if they drop the appeal, the next breakout could be explosive. So, if there's something else that's actually being referenced here, other than the Sunshine Act notice that I referenced, I am all ears. But every time that I've run into something like this, an assertion like this, it's always ended up being the Sunshine Act notice. So, just an educated guess here. Now, as far as this, if we don't get a resolution here the way that we want sooner than later, this holding up spot XRP ETFs, I highly doubt that, because this has nothing to do with the actual legal status of XRP itself. It has to do with a company that is a part of the XRP ecosystem. It would be almost unfathomable for anything having to do with Ripple to prevent a spot XRP ETF. I just don't think there's a snowball chance in how it's going to impact negatively what's happening there. So that's the good news. Now here you have attorney Mark Fagel, former SEC attorney. So he knows the ins and outs, and he said, and he just straight out called this out, and he said, they have not held 4 closed-door meetings on the appeal. And look, he has spent the last few years pushing back on claims like this, so, and specifically having to do with the Sunshine Act notices. So I'm assuming that's what he's thinking they are. Crypto Crows did have a very polite response here. He said, thanks, Mark. Fair point. Not all 4 meetings were explicitly labeled Ripple appeal, but in context, There's reason to watch closely. Closed-door SEC sessions ahead of ETF rulings, never just routine. Okay, well, that's not true. These are super routine. And they're not labeled for Ripple. I just, unless he's actually talking about something else I happen to have not heard on, I find that hard to believe. If there's some big super exciting SEC and Ripple appeals meetings or anything of the sort, there would be headlines everywhere. I don't know how I couldn't have heard about that. So this is just routine. But Attorney Fagel responded and said, they will meet on the topic of dismissing the appeal a single time. Obviously hasn't happened yet. And since the agenda is confidential, nobody outside the SEC will know they have approved dismissing it until they file papers. Everything else people are saying is make-believe. Yeah, and so that's been my experience too. Everything that people are saying, people do, I love our community, but I'm just being honest. There are a lot of people that have some very big imaginations, let's say, and some people will start saying stuff and then it gets bandied about as though it's actual fact, as if it came from I've seen too much of this stuff. Then somebody else asked Attorney Fagel a question. He says that, does the SEC have a deadline to report to the appellate court? Is it August 15th, or is that something different? And Mark responded and said, I believe that's the date for the parties to report on their status of their appeals. It doesn't mean it's a hard deadline by which they must file their dismissal papers, but I assume they will try to do so before then. So he actually thinks that this is all going to be buttoned up in all likelihood within the next couple weeks, and that would be fantastic. Now, even though XRP does have complete legal clarity, even though the war on crypto is over, this is the type of news that when it breaks, could, I'm not predicting it will, but could result in XRP markets on a global scale going berserk, because we are in a bull run still, despite the fact that as I'm recording this, the market is pulling back a little bit. Nothing crazy. It's very normal. Even at the, right before the most euphoric part of a bull run, this stuff happens. So it's certainly not something I'm concerned about. But if you get news like that in the right environment, it could start running anyway. So I will be watching for that. Now, here's a post from Attorney Bill Morgan of the XRP community. He wrote, the SEC has not withdrawn the appeal in the Ripple matter yet. There is no deadline on the SEC to withdraw the appeal. However, the SEC needs to report to the appeal court by August 15th, 2025, which acts as a deadline for the SEC to do something, although it may just ask for more time. We will hear something about the matter in the next 2 weeks. Okay, and so he seems to be thinking in line with Attorney Fagel. Something's going to be happening sooner than later. But we'll see exactly what that looks like. But don't be surprised if this is all wrapped up much sooner than later. All right, and then we have this story. SEC approves in-kind creations and redemptions for crypto ETPs. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has approved in-kind creation and redemption for cryptocurrency exchange-traded products. And I'll note that ETFs are a subcategory of ETPs. They're a type of ETP. It says, giving authorized representatives the ability to exchange shares directly for the underlying crypto assets instead of cash. In a Tuesday announcement, the securities regulators stated that approved Bitcoin and Ether funds will be permitted to create and redeem shares on an in-kind basis. And he said, here's a quote, it's a new day at the SEC, and a key priority of my chairmanship is developing a fit-for-purpose regulatory framework for crypto asset markets, SEC Chairman Paul Atkins said in a statement. Atkins said the new rules will make crypto ETPs less costly and more efficient. In-kind creations and redemption provide flexibility and cost savings to ETP issuers, authorized participants, and investors, resulting in a more efficient market, said Jamie Selway, the director of the Division of Trading and Markets at the SEC. And so, before this, if this weren't to happen, this would apply to XRP, of course, spot ETFs, which will ultimately get approved. If you wanted to sell your spot XRP ETF in the future without this, I mean, you could sell it, but you can't get XRP as a redemption. You could sell it and get dollars. So if you wanted XRP, you just couldn't do it. You could get dollars. That adds friction and selling to the market, and then you just have to go and take your dollars and actually purchase the XRP yourself. But there are other ways to do it. So this just opens up, and this is something that never would have happened under the previous administration. It's just one more thing, but it's going to make the lives of individuals easier. So that's one thing. And then also there will be fewer transactions, ultimately resulting in fewer trading fees. So it's just one more thing that's going to make it more likely that people are going to be very happy and willing to engage in purchasing spot ETFs. because they know they have more optionality when they want to exit. So cool stuff. It's just one more thing, and very happy to see this. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.